Hey everyone, Chris Sawyer here. The Varietal Show is back. I am with a great man right here that you might not know unless you know your Australian culture quite well. This is Tim Duval and his dad. We were here in San Francisco today celebrating his dad's 50th vintage. This is an amazing thing. For those of you that know Australian wines, well, let's go back to who knows Australia? Who knows who Crocodile Dundee is? Who knows who Men at Work is? Who knows who kangaroos are? That's how you probably got to know Australia first. But for me, in getting to know Australian culture, it also went through the wine and the business of wine. And I think about Penfolds. Penfolds is one of the great brands of the world. That some people know it, some people don't. If you've been in this business for a long time, you better know Penfolds. And John, Tim's dad, was one of the great winemakers of Penfolds. And I'll tell you, it's during that period that I got to know wines, and it made a big difference in my life. When he started in 1973, you guys, that's how long ago. How old were you in 1973?
I wasn't born.
He was not born. We do have background audience here that's laughing at this with good reason, and they have good laughter. But the fact is that his dad was an amazing man. One of the greatest vintages I've ever tasted in my life of any wine, of any brand, was Penfolds Grange 1976. And his dad was there during this point. It's Robert Parker gave it 100 points when I worked for the Getty family as their private sommelier. We tasted it with Robert Parker, and it tasted still young. I mean, this was probably 15, 17 years ago, and it was still young. Peter Gago, hello to you, Peter Gago, the great winemaker who presented that wine at that point. Your dad has a cultural thing too that goes way back to Barossa Valley and to Eden Valley too, that is really special. We tasted some wines today. We were here with you and your dad, Tim, tasting through vintage after vintage that your dad was responsible for, and then you came along in this little thing. Tell everyone a little bit about your family culture and where you grew up. And we don't need to go into your law practices and stuff before you came into this, but you know, this is an important thing about where you were born and why you're why these wines actually represent that.
Yeah, great. Well, I guess I'm second generation to work with my dad, John, in the Barossa Valley, and we've had 20 years of our family winery, John Duval Wines. But as you were saying, he had 29 years with Penfolds before John Duval Wines, and he was the first winemaker in his family. But we were multi-generational grape growers. Yep. So my grandparents, my great-grandparents had grapes south of Adelaide, not in the Barossa, yep, an area called Morphett Vale, so closer to McLaren Vale. Very, very famous vineyards down the area. Used to sell the fruit to Penfolds, so it was kind of very, meant to be that Dad worked for Penfolds, that family relationship. And he only had one job interview in his entire life. Pretty good one to get at Penfolds.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, those family vineyards were acquired by the government for housing,
yeah,
so they're no longer there. So Dad couldn't make wine from the family estate, moved up to the Barossa Valley, 1974, first vintage, started working with Penfolds, and I guess, had that dynamic career with Penfolds as kind of the internationalisation of Australian wine really kind of started to hit. Dynamic period in the 90s where Penfolds were really, I guess, coming onto the world scale, Spectator #1 wine, obviously some success with Parker. So he had the privilege of, I guess, being the custodian of Grange during those times.
Yeah.
But his passion, I guess, was in winemaking and doing something that was kind of heart and soul winemaking. Yeah. So when Penfolds was becoming a bigger company, he thought the time was right to hand the baton over to Peter Gago and start something for our family, a bit more personal.
And let me say one thing too. You made a very big comment there. One word that you said, custodian. Custodian, yes, based on what Penfolds was making. But your dad also, there were 3 or 4 different wines, especially the bin number wines. If you go into a really great wine shop and you look at the Penfolds rack right there that says Australia, greatest wines of Australia, you're going to find Penfolds in there somewhere. But you also find the bin numbers, and they are specific parts from vineyards. There's specific barrel programs, there's specific everything. And that's kind of what your dad had a little signature in Penfolds There was already the Grange. It was already there, and you had to make it kind of the way it was. And your dad got the opportunity to really expand that empire and really kind of say, you know what, this is a really special thing that I get to do. And I think that you guys have really done this with this brand, and it started in 2003, you guys. So here we are, even on the 20-year anniversary of that. And don't forget, 50-year anniversary of John and him making wines. But here we are today having a great time talking about this, eh?
Yeah, absolutely. And as you were saying, I think that kind of developing a few new wines at Penfolds, things like the RWT, which was Barossa Valley Shiraz in French oak. And that's very much the kind of more our philosophy in our own John Duval wines, is kind of Barossa fruit, French oak, and an elegant expression of old vineyards. And so Dad was very proud of that wine when he created it at Penfolds, and I think nice to see that legacy live on with Penfolds, and of course in our own wines now.
I agree. So right now we're starting off with actually a newer vintage, and this is great. This is the John Duval wines right here, and you can see that. But this is actually Cabernet Sauvignon, and I'll tell you right now, this is 2021 vintage from Barossa Valley. And you know, the fact is that I tasted this. This is the third wine just as we walked in here today. We tasted that great Roussanne Marsanne Viognier blend that you do, and that's for your mother, right?
Pretty much.
Pretty much. Mom wins. Winning hashtag. But just, you know, that was a great one. Then we went into Grenache, and we're going to talk about Grenache in a minute. Let's not go there yet. But Cabernet Sauvignon was always part of the super blend of Grange. Grange was always Shiraz, which it means Syrah to all of you out there. Like Shiraz and Syrah are the same grape. They come from, actually not from Australia. That's not where it was indigenous. It comes from Persia about 2,000 plus years ago. But the fact is that Cabernet and Shiraz had something to do with each other. This was an area, this is like prior to almost California even experimenting with this. Penfolds was way ahead of us back in the 1950s, and when we were talking about 1976, they're still making this wine today. And Cabernet has great possibilities in places all over the world. We're still young on Cabernet, to be really honest. Grenache, it's the most planted red grape in the world. But Cabernet, when I tasted this today, I was like, oh, wow, that is a really good expression of Cabernet Sauvignon. Tell us a little bit about where this fruit comes from for this one.
Absolutely. So this is the very first release of this wine. It's actually due to get on the water to come out to the States in November. So probably early next year, there's a chance that you'll see it in market. Very first release of that wine. It's actually from Barossa, which is a combination of Barossa Valley and Eden Valley. So the fruit sourcing for that one is mainly from the Eden Valley, which is slightly cooler, slightly higher elevation, and I think helps with that Cabernet varietal character, keeping some more of that kind of slight herbal lick, and then that lovely kind of cassis fruit, that kind of lovely purity of fruit.
Yeah.
And I think that's what the Eden Valley helps to bring to that blend. And then Barossa Valley, slightly lower elevation, slightly warmer, has some richness and some kind of good density to it that helps to balance those kind of top notes of the Eden Valley Cabernet.
It's amazing. I say we move on though, because I had you pick out certain wines that you really wanted to show. If you guys can't tell, this is a big bottle. This is a small bottle. This is a regular size bottle. This is a Magnum. And we're going to taste another one right here. This is the Plexus. And the Plexus is kind of this is your signature wine that you can always taste a lot about this, this whole brand and the family's heritage by just tasting this wine. This is the last drops that we left just for you to be here to watch us taste them and to want some, because it's delicious, you guys. So this is a fun thing. This is 2010 vintage. This is Shiraz Grenache-Mouvedre 1.5 liter bottling that we got to taste today. I'll just say, speaking on behalf of the sommeliers, the wine buyers, all these great people that were here today, it was really a super treat to be able to taste these older wines. We think about wines as not about the here and now. It's about being, let's go crazy right now. Let's be Bacchus right this second. But great wines can age for a long time, and they become different than they were. What were some of your first experiences with that, and your dad, and like tasting a wine when you were young, where you said, oh man, this might be better than when I remember it, or something that's like, oh wow, that's got flavors like I've never experienced before.
Well, I guess one of the great privileges for me is with Dad working for so long in the industry is he's got a great cellar, and so now I get the opportunity to go down and pick a few bottles from the cellar and see the benefit of a lot of great Australian wines that are kind of iconic in Australia that many people might not have tried over here in the States. And I think the great thing about those wines is they do really improve with age. The tannins soften down. You get some of that kind of secondary complexity, and I think they are some of the great old, ageability wines of the world. And I think in Australia we kind of perhaps glossed over sometimes, and it's forgotten how well these wines sell. Particularly when they're made well, they're picked without being too ripe, and they've got good elegance and balance as young wines. They can age exceptionally well. And I think these style of wines, the Shiraz, Grenache-Mouvedre blends, are a really good example of that. They're primary and juicy and delicious and aromatic as young wines, but we see it now, the 2010. It's got amazing complexity, it's got lovely spice, and the kind of tannins are softened down, and it's such a nice food wine now. You can have this with so many, a little bit of protein, but a rich sauce, it will just, match beautifully. I think, if you're looking for a great example of kind of great Aussie blend, these three varieties make a good case for it.
I agree with you 100%. And a lot of people just know GSM, and that's why I always try to say the Australian version. GSM might, not very good. He doesn't condone that for me to say that, but anyways. The thing is that Grenache is a very important thing, but Shiraz is kind of the signature of Australia. But what I really love about what you guys did is you didn't go straight into Shiraz, and your dad didn't dive right into that and said, Shiraz is going to make us everyone knows Shiraz in Australia. You really, his focus was on, I worked with so many great vineyards that had so many things. Some of this Grenache that's in here is 160-year-old vines, you guys. 160 years old. This is like 3 to 4 generations of people that they have outlived. And I really feel it, and I think that one of the things that we really tasted today is that Eden Valley and how special that is, and your dad really being able to hone in on those, especially people that he was working with, buying fruit from, for Penfolds, and being able to secure these things. If you don't know, in Australia, and also certain people here like Joel Peterson and people like that, if you get Mouvedre, we call it Mataro, and it is very much what it is called over there in Australia, or down there, sorry, down under, don't forget that, down under. But it's an important grape too. You've got all 3 parts in this glass right now, and they all mean something to you, don't they?
They do, yeah. I think we love having the Shiraz at the core of this wine because it provides lovely structure, that kind of mid-palate richness, kind of black fruit, blue fruit, and then the Grenache really adds aromatic lift, kind of that red fruit, spice, and the Mataro has some lovely base notes, some savouriness, some tannin, and a lovely acid to clean up the palate. So all 3 of those varieties add something really lovely together to create kind of this harmonious blend. I think that's the reason why it was the first wine that Dad released under his own label, is they're really kind of, there's a hero grape in Shiraz, but Mataro and Grenache are really underappreciated. And I think in this wine you can see the heavy lifting that they're doing to create this kind of lovely blend.
Absolutely. I will say one thing too. We're here at this great restaurant, Palio, in San Francisco, and I had an amazing dish today that was pork, pork shank wrapped in bacon. You guys, just FYI. And also, just everything about it. This is a wine that you make a dinner about. This one, the 2010, you make the dinner around it. 2000, this younger vintage of the Cabernet, I would be pairing this wine with dinners that people are doing. This one is worth it and deserving of being paired around, because you want all the greatness of this wine to shine, and pork can really do that. Pork's like the one that goes all over the world. We're not just talking about these kinds of meats from certain areas, but pork is amazing, especially when you add bacon. Hello. And the polenta was amazing with this. And I'll just say that it just complemented these flavors. It made them explode even more. This wine is super alive, you guys, and it's fine winemaking. It's not just the great grapes. You have to have great grapes to make great wines. There's no doubt about it. Your dad had an inside track on that. You know that. And your dad was also from a family that was a farming family. Lamb was a big deal, and your grandfather was a big deal with lamb. And so food culture and wine culture is very important to you.
Absolutely.
And I mean, don't you think that this is a fun one?
Absolutely love it. I think we don't drink enough wines that have got this kind of age on it, so it's a real treat when we get to bring something out from the cellar, not only show the ageability of this style, but just, as you say, open up all those food matching possibilities.
Yep.
And we just kind of enjoy something that's kind of in the prime of its life.
Yeah. One of the reasons I want Tim to be here is because he's the next generation that's going to be the ambassador for this. I mean, John's an amazing man. He was here with us earlier. But I want you guys to meet Tim, because this is like the future of this brand, the John Duval brand, and this is Tim. But, when we talk about Shiraz, we have to have a Shiraz in front of you guys. And this is a special one. This is the new vintage of the 2021 that's coming out. You can see this color is dark. I mean, this is a dark color, you guys. You can kind of see it there. Oh, you can't even see me, or you can't see Tim through it. You can't see me through it. It's dark. And it is such a great brand that really represents this grape variety. Shiraz is Syrah, but this one's special because it comes from your home area there. And as I was saying a little bit during our conversation with everyone else in this room, I was saying that this Eden Valley has become something to me because it reminds me so much of cool climate Syrah. And it reminds me too that elevation does matter, and in this case that's really a big deal there between Barossa Valley and then Eden Valley. So tell us a little bit about that and why this is so special to you.
So I guess we're so lucky that in the Barossa Valley, where it's kind of slightly less elevation, slightly warmer, we get to make wines of richness and structure and have that kind of Barossa generosity that a lot of drinkers will know. But not very far away, kind of 10 to 15 miles away to the east of Barossa Valley, is the Eden Valley, which is slightly higher elevation, about 2 to 3 weeks later ripening, and provides lovely kind of aromatic lift, some acidity and some freshness that really complements that Barossa Valley fruit so well. So the advantage for us is we don't have to go very far to have access to some of that kind of more cooler climate-inspired fruit, which I think just is so harmonious with the Barossa Valley Shiraz that we make as well. Entity Shiraz, it was the second wine that Dad released when he started the family brand, and one of our best known wines. It's about a blend of about 13 different vineyards from across our area, across Barossa Valley and Eden Valley. 75% Barossa Valley fruit, 25% Eden Valley fruit. And I think for people that love kind of Barossa Shiraz, this is a great one to seek out. Yeah,
I just think that them together, it's a beautiful harmonious relationship where they complement each other, and so it's not all this bigness in his, it's also about freshness, and freshness to you guys really does make a difference, because vintage character is what separates everything. I mean, if they all were cookie cutter wines, they tasted the same every year, you might as well put them in boxes at this point. They're not. They're about vintages, and Australia is very important in that, because we know that they get hot there, but they can also have cool vintages, and these things happen. It's very similar to the West Coast here in California, or Oregon, or Washington, or where we're at all over the map. And that's a really important thing, and I feel like these wines really express each vintage really well.
Yeah, absolutely. I think vintage variation is very important for us. We certainly don't have a cookie cutter approach in the winery. It will depend on the year and what's happening in the vineyard. The 2021 that we're drinking was a lovely, elegant year. It was a cooler year where we had kind of La Nina influenced weather patterns, which have meant with lovely aromatics, lovely acidity and freshness in this wine. I think people that might have had some preconceptions about what Barossa Shiraz was maybe 10 or 15 years ago, kind of maybe jammy or super sweet, this is a lovely wine to show them, because it has elegance, it has a lovely kind of acidity and freshness to it. And I think that speaks of what modern Barossa is.
Yeah. And not only do I like it now, but I can't wait till this ages too, because it becomes as we've seen today, these wines age extremely well. So that's great winemaking. It's about balance. It's about texture. It's about, having natural acidity. It's about having the real, true identity of the varieties that are in these blends too. And I feel like you guys have done such a great job. You're the next generation. You have to carry Dad's journey
no
on.
pressure, hey? Yeah.
No pressure at all on him. But I wanted you guys to meet Tim, and I wanted you to know about this John Duval brand. These new vintages are going to be out very soon. I'm a big fan of them. I was very excited to be invited here, and I give a little shout out to my great friend Laura Abbott, who's awesome. She's dancing over there. Yeah, of course she would be. All these guys, they import this into the United States, and she will. She will, and she will photobomb. Never doubt her ability to do that. But the fact is, getting a call from her the other day and being able to be here with you today, Tim, and having you here in California, and your appreciation for what we do and why we buy these wines here in California. It's an important thing. We care a lot about Australia. We really do. Your dad was a big part in putting Australia on the world wine map. And that's an important thing, and this brand really represents that. So
thank you.
Thanks for watching, you guys.
Cheers, guys.
The Varietal Show will be back, and Tim is the man to watch for in the future. So cheers. Tim. Cheers.
Done.